Hello, friends. So I saw this article in Rolling Stone magazine from yesterday where the CEO of Live Nation, Michael Rapino, was making the claim that concert ticket prices are actually not as high as they should be, in his opinion. And many of you might be surprised by this, but I don't think he's entirely wrong. So let's get into it. So why are concert ticket prices so high in 2025? It's a multifaceted explanation, and I want to get into all of it, but I think there's the rising costs of just what it takes to go on tour, gas, lodging, crew, wages, all of that has gone up over the years. And then the two things outside of just regular old inflation that I think are really impacting this are, one, the devaluation of music in its recorded format, and two, this is where I think I disagree with Michael Rapino, Live Nation Ticketmaster's monopoly power within this sector of the music industry. And I want to get into both of those and then maybe talk a little bit about how, at least from the independent working class artist point of view, we can try to combat these things and overcome them moving forward. So basic supply and demand does definitely play a big role in the explosion in ticket prices over the last 20 years. And if you look at this chart, it is a year-over-year inflation-adjusted change in the cost of the top 100 concert tours. Post-COVID, there's this giant spike right here where people were just starving for live music, and all of the major tours charged crazy amounts of money, basically to make up for lost revenue. You may have heard these tours referred to as the revenge tours for COVID. Here's the problem though. These spikes over here, where Taylor Swift's Eras tour would have been taking place, have raised the ceiling on what people are willing to pay for a concert ticket, and unfortunately, the trend is not really for those ceilings to go back down. So it's definitely going to take a really big market adjustment for these ticket prices to level back out, and it might take years for that to happen. So let's talk about the devaluation of music in comparison to some other media formats. In this article, Michael Rapino brings up that Beyoncé travels with 62 tractor trailers full of PA, sound, staging, lighting equipment. Basically, she brings the equivalent of a Super Bowl production to every town that she stops in. And he brought up how people will complain about having to pay $800 to see that quality of a show. But then in the same time, people in sporting events, for example, will say, brag, or there's some kind of clout associated with paying 70 grand for a courtside seat at a Knicks game in Madison Square Garden. And his point was that we have devalued recorded music and music generally in society compared to other experiences that people are willing to pay crazy amounts of money for. And he's not entirely wrong. I've got this chart here. It is the per capita US recorded music spending by format from 1999 to approximately 2024. And there's a very important year on this graph, and it's the year 2016. And that is when streaming overtook digital downloads and physical sales to be the primary way that people purchase, quote unquote, purchase recorded music for their consumption. Now, I want to talk about the difference between ownership and access, and how basically everything moving to a subscription service, whether it be music recording software, photo editing software, all of these AI tools, everything is a subscription now. And so you're paying for access versus ownership. And what that meant for music is even mid-tier artists in the 90s and 2000s, when you had to purchase a physical product to listen to music, could make a pretty decent living selling modest amounts of records. And now, instead of spending, $200 or $300 a year on music and getting 20 to 30 CDs tops, you can spend $144 a year. And by that, I'm talking about giving Spotify your $12 a month. And you have access to all of the music that's basically ever been made. And so why would you value each individual album that you're listening to in the same way that you would in the 90s or early 2000s before this technology existed? And there are a lot of people who benefit from this arrangement, primarily Spotify, because they're taking 30% out of every $12 per month that you send them. And then they just divvy up whatever's left, and the vast majority of that goes to the top 1% of artists. And the reason this is so screwed up is because they use a pro rata royalty distribution system, wherein, say I never listen to Drake, Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, The Weeknd, all these artists who are the top, Billie Eilish, all these, they still get the majority of my money because the pro-rata royalty distribution system works this way. Out of the 70% that's left from all of the revenue, it gets divided up based off of your percentage of the market share that your streams get, right? So all the artists that get the majority of the streams get the majority of the money. This is in comparison to a user-centric model like SoundCloud, where your money goes to the artists that you listen to. So I've said all of that to say, even mid-tier artists who 20 years ago could have made a significant amount of income off of album sales are having to charge more for live performances because that's all they have left. And that's especially true of working class musicians like myself who don't have a lot of streaming success, and I don't get to tour and go sell out theaters. I mean, I have to piecemeal together a living doing all kinds of gigs just to contribute to my household income. So yeah, in my opinion, if you love someone's music and you're not going to pay for the recorded version of it, you should be spending 2 or 3 times as much as you used to see them do their thing in person. And again, all of these other inflation-related costs add up. So for your favorite artist to even be able to do all this stuff, to give you a live show, it costs them more money. You're going to have to pay more money. It's simply supply and demand and basic economics. Some of those other costs, they're real costs like gas, lodging, your crew's wages, the cost of the production materials just to build the rigging and everything for these productions. All of that stuff. If you want to have these world-class, one-of-a-kind experiences, you're going to have to pay more for them, unless you want to start buying physical copies of music again. So sure, there's real costs. We already undervalue recorded music. From a fan's perspective, you should have to pay more for these live performances. Now, here's the problem I have with that $800 Beyonce ticket, and it is this. Because of the monopoly power that Live Nation and Ticketmaster have over this sector of the industry, they control the venues, all of the top venues. They control them. They control the ticketing. So they have all the infrastructure for the purchasing and selling of tickets and the promotion. So they're vertically integrated into every part of this process. And they've started just artificially inflating the cost of tickets by adding additional fees associated with the tickets. So not all of these crazy ticket price increases, not even the majority of it, is going to the artists themselves. So it's costing the artists more to put on these productions, and the fees are getting insanely high from the venue ticketing and promotional side of it. So the fans are having to pay more, the artists aren't making more. But again, the middlemen, the live version of Spotify, is making way more. So that's really the crux of it. And this is made worse by Ticketmaster's dynamic pricing system, where they're basically doing, the Uber surge pricing, but for ticket sales. So instead of scalpers buying up all the tickets and then artificially inflating the price, Ticketmaster is just doing it on the front end and keeping all of the scalping in-house. And again, maybe this does increase the gross revenue and help combat some of the rising costs of production and promotion and the infrastructure. But it seems to me like we're just doing this whole thing wrong. And we've got to figure out a way to get the control back in the hands of the fans and the artists. Now, what can we do? What is in our control as both artists and fans that could maybe help shift the balance back in our favor? One, like I mentioned, we have to figure out a way of compensating artists for their recorded work. When your favorite artist drops a new record, see if there's a way that you can just buy the digital download. Even if you're going to pay for the streaming, right? Let the streaming be when you want to just dabble in music that you don't really love. Sure, continue paying Spotify your $144 a year so that you have access. But when there's an artist that has made a body of work that really has affected you emotionally, it's been a positive impact on your life, give them extra money. Go out and buy a physical copy or buy a digital download, even if you don't even actually listen to it. Find a way to support them outside of the concerts, and maybe the concert prices might go down a little bit. So what can smaller or independent artists do to try to navigate this territory and avoid the Live Nation Ticketmaster trap? Well, there is the National Independent Venue Association. So if you're routing a tour, try to do it through members of that association. They try to maintain a healthy ecosystem of relations between artists, fans, and venues. The other thing you can do is try to keep it as DIY as possible. So book house shows. Here is a side-by-side look at what a Live Nation concert would bring in for the artist versus what a DIY like house show might bring in. And so this should be a call to action for artists to try their very best to keep as much control over the booking process that they feasibly can for as long as they can. Because you might be a massive artist selling out arenas at, a couple $100 a ticket, but you're really not taking that much of that revenue home with you. So it really becomes a game of scale. Whereas as an independent, smaller artist, you really can make quite a good living if you continue to do it as much yourself as you possibly can. So all hope is not necessarily lost on that front. Platforms like Dice and Eventbrite make it really easy and seamless to handle ticketing for your events. And then there's also Patreon, Bandcamp, all kinds of ways to increase your revenue stream outside of your live performances so that maybe you can be part of that balancing out of the valuation of music in its recorded format so that we don't have to rely entirely on our live shows to make up for it. And of course, there's always merch. All right, so that's gonna do it for this video. Tell me what you think in the comments. What's the most outrageous price you've ever paid for a concert ticket? What do you think you should do as a fan to try to combat this problem? Are there ways that I didn't mention in this video that you can think of to help independent artists navigate this territory? And what do you think is going to happen in the future with all this stuff? I know, load of questions, right? If you like the video, hit subscribe and like it and share it. I will leave links to my music in the description of this video, as well as some sources that you can check out for all of the info pertaining to the graphs that you've seen throughout this video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. P.S. I'm dropping a new single soon, so keep a lookout. Check me out on Instagram at @TDavisOfficial. Link in the description.